this is going to be a weird review to write because this film is a weird film. Now, first off, I adore Samara Weaving. She's a fantastic actress and she's one of my favorite scream queens ever. I love her in Ready or Not, The Babysitter, and even Guns Akimbo, which is more a comedy. And when she popped up in the Scream universe, I was fucking stoked, like I think most people were. So whether or not this film does well, she's an absolute gun, and I love that she's keen to stay in horror. I love it when people get famous in horror and they're like, you know what, I'm gonna fucking stay here. I'm gonna keep doing what brought me to the dance. I like that. I also love Simon Barrett, who is the writer of this film. He also wrote You're Next and The Guest, two films which I really like and highly recommend. So when I found out that they were getting together and they were doing an apocalypse film, I was pretty fucking excited, especially given the fact that it had monsters in it. I was pretty goddamn excited. Now, the problem with this movie is that it is experimental. The premise of this movie is that no one in this world speaks. So for an entire 90-minute movie, there's only about 4 or 5 lines of dialogue. And you might think, Jake, that's not a problem. You've seen A Quiet Place. It's very good. Yes, I did see A Quiet Place, but A Quiet Place was set in the real world where the rules were pretty much the same and they used sign language with subtitles. So there was still a bit of communication there. This movie is set possibly years after the rapture, which I assume is the biblical rapture. And I don't know what the rules or the law are, except the fact that there seems to be rules and law. Now, I'm not opposed to jumping in to a world with zero explanation and expect it all to be spoon-fed to me. That's fine. I don't mind. I don't mind doing that. But if you are going to do that, the contextual clues have to be really, really strong. And unfortunately, in this, they're not. Right? So this often leads to you not caring or understanding the world or the characters, and it can be really boring to watch. It's like, okay, so if you know what a good analog is? If you dropped someone into like level 4 of the Last of Us video game and turned all the subtitles off and muted it, that's kind of what happens here. Like, they're not going to get any of the contextual clues. They don't know why anyone's doing anything. It's going to be very hard to work out what the fuck's going on. That's sort of like what it is here. Even though the Last of Us story is pretty fucking great, if you don't know what the fuck's going on and you're halfway through, it's not going to work. But I will say though, the final 15, 20 minutes and ending are pretty fucking great. But it is an absolute slog to get there. And for me to not care about a character that Samara Weaving is playing shows you that along the way something went wrong, right? Like, I fucking love Samara Weaving, but I was like, I don't really care about your character. And it's even like I didn't even know that the character's name was Azrael until afterwards, where I googled it. Set sometime after the rapture, a young woman named Azrael and her partner are chased by a group of other survivors. I still don't quite know why, but I do know that they want to sacrifice her to some creature in the woods. Once again, I don't really know why or really get what the creatures are, but they're there. She manages to escape, and I think decides at some point to get revenge. And we get to see that. And yes, that is a clusterfuck of an explanation, and I'm sorry, but I don't really know why things are happening in this film, so it's really hard to not spoil it, but also tell you what's going on, because I don't really know myself. But let's start with the good. The actors in this film, they're all doing a great job. The bad guys are menacing. Samara Weaving, she's very convincing as a survivor. The kills are pretty fucking great. There are some really great kills involving the monsters that I was like, alright, that's pretty gory. There's fucking some throat ripping and shit, let's go. I also think the world is really interesting. even if it's not a great place to tell a cinematic story, I did believe this world existed. I was like, well, okay, this is a cool world, I guess. The woods that it takes place in are pretty fucking menacing. The cinematography is good. They do a lot of cool stuff with lighting. And like I said, the last 15, 20 minutes really utilizes Samara as like the badass angel of vengeance version of Samara that we got in Ready or Not, which is fucking great. I would happily watch a whole movie of her basically scoping out survivor outposts and destroying them like Far Cry. Really, that'd be fucking sick. I'd watch the fuck out of that. And this must have been a really tough shoot for some of the people because it's entirely set in a forest. And I was just trying to think about the logistics, and I'm like, it would have been really hard to get all this shit together in the middle of the forest and shoot there. Even just stuff like, they would have had to drive all the way out to a forest, I assume. Anyway, and there's lots of crazy fight scenes and shit, so I imagine that would have been really hard to shoot, so kudos to the crew. It looks good, like the fight scenes and shit look good. I just don't know why they were happening and just needed a bit more explanation. Like just a wafer of explanation would have been nice. So I really think this movie is either going to confuse people or bore people, unfortunately. Somewhat silent horror films can be pulled off. Like I said, A Quiet Place did it. Don't Breathe does it for long periods. But there was still some communication in both those films. There was sign language, there was writing, there was like hand signals. The only really explanation you get in this film is like paintings on a chapel wall, but the chapel's quite dark. It's like candlelit, and it only goes for like a minute. So I was still like, is that like a devil? Are they devils? Are we fighting demons? Are they demons? Can you kill these? Like, and one of the creatures dies in this, and I'm like, oh, okay, so why don't you just kill them? Like, it wasn't particularly hard to kill. I also think that it's also a tough sell to take someone who has so much momentum in the horror sphere as Samara Weaving, due to her charisma and charm and how funny she is, and then render her entirely mute. If I'm making an action film and I get Jason Momoa as the cast, like as the guy, you're going to be my main character, Jason Momoa, but I'm going to need you to wear this mask the entire time, and I'm going to need you to stand behind this big black box so no one can see your body. Like, you're taking away what a lot of people are coming for. I'm not against actors taking interesting roles and doing interesting shit. Like Tom Hardy, obviously in Bane, he was behind a mask and stuff like that. But the marketing sold Samara Weaving a lot in this, and you took away a lot of the shit that she uses to do her best work. So apart from like the gimmick of no one speaks in this film, which also raised a bunch of fucking questions, there's not a lot of this film for any of the actors to hang on to. The whole world is a weird mix of like religious and apocalyptic iconography, and when there is a character that does speak in this, and when they do, I was like, well, now I've got even more questions because of the way they speak and what they're asking and stuff. So you just sort of, if there's 10 minutes of confusing bit, fine. But there's like fucking 17 minutes of confusing bit. So you just spend most of the time going, like, I checked my watch. I caught myself checking my watch like 2 or 3 times. Unless you're a Samara Weaving fan, unfortunately, or an apocalyptic movie nut, there's just not a lot here for you. There is not. I definitely wouldn't go spend money on this film, to be honest. Which fucking, I hate that I am saying that, but I did not have a good time with this film movie. I recommend watching this if you just love looking at Samara Weaving. If you were like, God, I just want 90 minutes to just look at Samara Weaving running around being a badass for a little bit, okay, that might be the reason to come to this. If you like experimental horror films that have a bit of a gimmick, if the idea of a horror movie where no one talks, you're like, that's pretty fucking cool, I'd like to see that, okay, that might be That might be what you go into this movie for. Other than that, there's pretty much fuck all for you here. I don't recommend watching this if you love deep lore and story. It's here. I just you don't get any of it. You don't know. Like, I guarantee you that there is probably like a set Bible or something that has all the lore for this world. I bet you it's entirely fleshed out. You don't get any of it in this film though. If you get bored easily, if you're one of those people that check their phone every 5 minutes when you're watching a movie anyway, you will do that a lot in this movie. It doesn't draw you in. If you don't like apocalyptic movies, run the fuck away. This isn't even in the top 10 best apocalyptic movies in the last couple of years, to be honest. Which, once again, I fucking hate that I have to say that, because I love the crew that worked on this. I love them, but just not for me. I just really didn't like it. This is one of my disappointments of the year, and I'm still down for Samara Weaving doing horror. And if Simon Barrett wants to write something too, I'll take a look. But this lacks fun, it lacks scares, it lacks story, it lacks lore. It's a tough sell for pretty much fucking anyone, to be honest. I was like, who the fuck am I going to recommend this to? Movies that are, if you're like, God damn, I like the idea of this one. I just kind of wanted an apocalyptic film with an angel of vengeance. I got one for you. 2018's Revenge. It's by Coralie Farge, who recently did The Substance. She's got a lot of hype about her at the moment, which I also reviewed here, so go have a look at that. Revenge follows Matilda Lutz as Jen. She's the mistress of like this wealthy business guy who's on like a boys' weekend. Turns out the guys are fucking scumbags and they do awful things to her with the intention of killing her. She's outnumbered, she's outgunned, but she's sure as fuck not outsmarted. And she wreaks a bloody war upon these dudes, and it is so fucking satisfying to watch. It's one of the most satisfying movie watches ever. The last 10 minutes are blood-soaked craziness, and it's one of my favorite films of all time, 2018's Revenge. Highly, highly, highly recommend. Another pick is the 2023 Netflix movie Leave the World Behind. Like this one, it's an apocalypse movie that just drops you in the middle of the world, doesn't really give you a lot of explanation. Unexplained events are going on, doesn't really tell you anything. But what it does better than this one is it gives you contextual clues enough so that the story stays interesting. You still care about the characters, you still go like, okay, what are your next moves? Like, what are we doing? It sort of explains the character actions a bit more. And I really liked the way they told some of the events in the movie. Some of the apocalyptic events that happened I haven't seen before in a movie, so I really like that. It's also got superstar cast. Julia Roberts, Ethan Hawke, Mahershala Ali. Mahershala Ali, they're all fantastic. Go give that a go instead of this one if you really want an apocalyptic film. It's fucking good and it's on Netflix, so it's easy to watch. As always, thanks for watching. And remember, if you do want to follow along with this Spooktober Watch Fest, subscribe, hit the bell, do all that shit. Hopefully my one tomorrow is a bit better than this one. I'm hoping this was a bit of a bummer, to be honest. Peace.